Thank you for joining us again. We spent a few days with Moses, and we were particularly thinking about that encounter with the living God before his call to return to Egypt and be God's mouthpiece and God's saving arm for the people of Israel. Today, as we think about God, we're going to go back to a story from Abraham. We've already reminded ourselves that throughout the Old Testament, God is known as the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Well, we're going to remind ourselves of the story in Genesis 22, where Abraham was tested. You'll remember that Abraham and Sarah finally were gifted a son, Isaac. And with Isaac came that promise that Abraham's descendants would be more numerous than the stars and would go on and be a blessing for the whole world. Suddenly, it seems, in our account, that God was asking the unthinkable of Abraham, for him to sacrifice Isaac. Let's read Genesis 22, 1 to 14. Genesis 22, 1 to 14. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will show you. The next morning, Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey, took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day of the journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Stay here with the donkey, Abraham told the servants. The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father? Yes, my son, Abraham replied. We have the fire and the wood, the boy said, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son, Abraham answered, and they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told them to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice, and at that moment the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. So he ran and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Jireh, which means the Lord will provide. To this day, people still use that name as a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. This is a story of great faith on Abraham's part. Faith that God would not undo his plans, his promises to him. That he could trust his most precious son to the Lord's care. When Isaac asked where the sacrifice was, we have fire, we have wood, where's the sheep? How does Abraham respond? God will provide. Abraham had experienced the Lord's provision already in his life and knew that he could trust him in this moment. And there, at the last moment, you can imagine a dramatic Hollywood cinematic scene, knife poised. The Lord steps in. Abraham looks up, spots a ram caught in a bush. The Lord's provision. Why the last-minute provision? Well, perhaps it's the way that God works in order for us to build our faith and trust in him, so that we learn to rely on him. Providing is part of God's nature. It's who he is. It's part of his name. He can be known as Jehovah Jireh. He is the great provider. And he knows what we need well before we know. Our word provide is made up of 2 parts. Pro, meaning before, and vide, which is connected to our word video. The word has this sense of something being seen, watched in advance. And of course, God sees things in advance. God knows what we need in advance of our need. Like the ram in the thicket, God provides in good time the good things that we need. I wonder what it is you think you need at this time. I wonder what I think I need at this time. I wonder if we can think back to times in the past when the Lord has provided for us, perhaps just in time. Maybe that will help us, like Abraham, to trust, to step forward in faith, knowing that we can trust the Lord will provide. May God bless us this day.
So high.